The room was warm with soft golden lights and quiet music drifting through the hall. It was the kind of evening many people in their 50s and 60s recognize instantly. A formal dinner. Polite smiles. Careful conversations. The slow rhythm of glasses touching and chairs sliding across polished floors. Many of the guests had lived long enough to know that life rarely moves in straight lines. It bends. It surprises. And sometimes it humbles us when we least expect it. At one of the front tables sat a quiet man named Marcus Hale, age 58. His dark hair was slightly graying at the temples and his posture carried the calm patience of someone who had worked hard most of his life. His black suit was simple. His expression was thoughtful. Marcus had the kind of face that many people overlook in crowded rooms. He was not loud. He was not flashy. But there was a steady dignity about him. Beside him stood his wife, Veronica Hale, age 54. Veronica was confident and striking. Her blonde hair fell neatly around her shoulders and she wore a deep green evening dress that caught the warm light of the chandelier above. Veronica was known in social circles for her strong opinions and sharp tongue. People admired her confidence. Some quietly feared it. Tonight the hall was filled with investors, executives, and consultants. Everyone had gathered for what was expected to be the largest corporate partnership announcement of the year. An $800 million contract that would shape the future of a powerful technology company called Silveridge Global. Few people in the room knew the full story behind Silveridge. Fewer still understood who truly owned the company. Marcus Hale had built Silveridge over 30 years. Slowly. Quietly. With patience and stubborn determination. He had grown up in a modest neighborhood, raised by parents who taught him that respect and honesty mattered more than applause. Over time he had stepped away from public leadership and allowed a team of executives to run the company. Most people in the industry assumed the founder had retired. Marcus had never corrected them. He preferred to observe quietly from the background. Tonight he had been invited as a simple guest. Or so many believed. Across the stage a group of corporate leaders prepared to finalize the agreement with a major investment firm. Among them stood Veronica. She had recently joined the advisory team representing the investors. She was proud of her position and eager to prove her influence. Veronica had always believed Marcus lacked ambition. In her eyes he was too quiet. Too slow. Too ordinary. She never fully understood what he had built. As the evening progressed a host stepped forward to guide the ceremony. Soft applause moved through the room as the final documents were brought to the table. The agreement would officially transfer strategic control of Silveridge Global to the investor group represented by Veronica. At least that was the plan. Marcus sat silently as conversations floated around him. One guest leaned toward him and asked politely if he worked in consulting. Marcus simply smiled. Another assumed he was a distant relative of someone important. Marcus nodded kindly. Sometimes silence reveals more than explanations. A few minutes later Veronica approached the signing table holding a glass of red wine. Her heels clicked confidently against the polished floor. Cameras were ready. The audience leaned forward with curiosity. She glanced at Marcus sitting quietly near the front. For years she had felt frustrated by his calm personality. Tonight that frustration rose to the surface. She walked toward him. The room slowly grew quiet as people noticed the tension in her expression. Veronica stopped beside Marcus and spoke loudly enough for the nearby guests to hear. Marcus, you always sit quietly while the world moves forward. You never had the courage to build anything important. Look at this room. Look at what real ambition looks like. Some guests shifted in their chairs feeling uncomfortable. Marcus looked up at her calmly. His eyes carried no anger. Only patience. Veronica raised her glass of wine and laughed sharply. This is what happens when someone wastes their life being ordinary. Then in one sudden motion she tipped the glass. Red wine poured over Marcus' head and down the front of his suit. Gasps spread across the hall. The wine ran across his hair and down his collar like dark rain. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment as the liquid dripped slowly to the floor. Veronica shook her head with open disdain. Maybe now you will finally wake up. The room fell silent. Moments like this move slowly. Especially for people who have lived long enough to understand how quickly pride can turn into regret. Marcus calmly reached for a napkin on the table. He wiped his face gently. No anger. No shouting. Only a quiet breath. Then something unexpected happened. An elderly man standing near the stage hurried forward. His name was Leonard Brooks, age 65, the chairman of Silveridge Global. His voice carried across the silent hall. Mrs. Hale, you should stop. Right now. Veronica looked confused. Why? Leonard glanced at Marcus with deep respect. Because the man you just humiliated is the founder and the majority owner of Silveridge Global. The room froze. Whispers rippled across the audience. Veronica's face slowly drained of color. Marcus stood quietly. Wine still stained his shirt, but his posture remained steady. Leonard continued speaking carefully. Marcus Hale owns 72% of this company. And no contract can be signed tonight without his approval. The silence that followed felt heavy and real. Many people in their 50s and 60s know this kind of moment well. The moment when truth enters a room and every assumption collapses. Veronica stared at Marcus. Her confident expression began to fade. You never told me. Marcus looked at her with calm eyes. You never asked. He spoke gently. Not with bitterness. Simply with honesty. I spent many years building something slowly. You spent many years believing loud voices create success. The guests watched quietly. Marcus turned toward the stage. Leonard handed him the final contract. Marcus read it slowly. Then he placed the document on the table. This agreement will not be signed tonight. His voice remained calm. Silveridge was built to create opportunity for people who respect the work behind it. Not to reward pride. Veronica lowered her eyes. For the first time that evening she seemed unsure of herself. Marcus looked back at her. Life has a strange way of teaching lessons. Sometimes it takes years to understand the people sitting quietly beside us. He paused for a moment. Then he spoke with gentle clarity. Respect is not something you pour on someone like wine. It grows slowly between people who listen. The audience remained silent, absorbing his words. Marcus thanked the guests for attending and calmly left the stage area. No anger. No revenge. Only dignity. Outside, the cool night air moved softly across the city streets. Marcus stood for a moment looking at the quiet skyline. At his age he had learned something important. Success means very little if it costs kindness. And power means nothing if it is used to embarrass others. Back inside the hall, many guests remained thoughtful. Some embarrassed. Some inspired. Veronica stood alone near the signing table, realizing that life had just given her a lesson no business school could teach. The years ahead would give her time to reflect. Because wisdom often arrives quietly after pride has finished speaking. And sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who never needed attention in the first place. For those of us listening today on the Black Voices channel, this story carries a gentle reminder. Never measure a person by how loudly they speak. Measure them by the patience they carry when the world misunderstands them. Life becomes richer when we lead with humility. And when we remember that every person has a story still unfolding. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to support the channel. Like the video. Share it with someone who appreciates meaningful stories. Subscribe to the Black Voices. And leave a comment telling us what lesson you felt in this story. Your voice matters here. And together we keep these stories alive.